Hello everybody. Today I will be covering a chess puzzle which I think is really cool. I posted this puzzle in the puzzles channel in the UF Chess Discord, which and it had some it had some great feedback and some really interesting tries. So I thought I'd make a video on it because I think it's really interesting for those of you who love chess. This is just a brilliant embodiment of how beautiful chess is. So if you want to go ahead and pause the video and try to solve, it is black to play and win, and I'll give you a few seconds to try to figure it out. So to begin this puzzle, which is not very simple as you can see, let's just start by dissecting the little individual tactics here. First off, notice that white's back rank is very weak. The queen cannot deliver back rank mate here because the knight is defending this square, but also because this knight could drop to f1. However, also notice that this bishop is pinned. For instance, if this bishop was gone and it was black's move, black could go rook c8 check, and after knight f1 covering the check, black would have queen takes h2, which would be checkmate because, again, this knight is pinned to the rook, that is delivering the back rank attack to the king. Also notice something. This pawn is pinned. Why? Because it's the bishop all the way down here. Yeah, this is not a pawn. It's just it's a pawn in disguise. So that's just a couple of things to notice. That white's king is very weak. Yeah, sure, there are a lot of pawns and there's a piece here, but all the heavy pieces are on this side of the board and they're not very well coordinated. White would love, if white had a few moves, they'd play something like knight d3, knight f1, rook a1, and then white would have no problems whatsoever and have a monster attack along black's king. It would be horrible. But white's pieces are horribly coordinated. They're not really doing anything. What is this rook doing? Nothing really. I mean, sure, it could contribute to a battery, but there's a pawn here, so there's no battery. It's useless. And this rook here is, yeah, it's staring at this pawn, but who cares? It's not really doing anything. It's not creating any real threats. And this knight here is very vulnerable. It doesn't seem so because this bishop appears, at least for the moment, to be X-ray defending it, and it also appears to be defended by two pawns. Well, it's not defended by this pawn, of course, because we just pointed out that's pinned. However, it is defended with the H pawn, and it appears to be X-ray defended with the bishop. So let's go over the most obvious move, which I think, at least for me, is queen takes c7. Now there are two problems with this move. One of the problems is that white can just play queen takes a5. If white plays, knight takes here, then okay, there's back rank mate, and that's fantastic. But white's not going to play that, presumably. White is just going to go here, and white is going to have no issues. You're going to force a queen trade, essentially. Notice that if you go here, there's just knight f1, and white is completely winning because they're about to absolutely obliterate you on the king's side. Additionally, after queen c7, white can also just play knight f1 and protect their back rank. And again, there's nothing here. White can just take on a5, and there are some serious issues, namely the fact that you are about to get checkmated. And you can preserve the game with queen to c5, but even if the queens get traded off by something like this and this, black is still dead lost. I mean, they're down 3 pawns for. I mean, look at this. 4 connected pass pawns, or 3 depending on if you count a double pawn as a pass pawn. This pawn is not going anywhere, and black is completely lost. So queen takes c7, unfortunately, does not work. Another logical move, I think, is knight takes g3. Remember, of course, if the bishop takes, this is not a free queen, because if the bishop takes and there's back rank mate and white wins, yay. But that's not going to happen, and white is going to play the only move in this position. In fact, this knight takes g3 turns out to be a very tricky move, but white does have the reply queen takes a5, and white is completely winning. The only move for black eventually has to play queen a6 either now or after knight e2. So, black plays queen a6. White trades and then plays something like knight d3. Why knight d3? Because there's a piece hanging for black, and basically they're leaving 2 pieces hanging at the same time. So no, this is not a piece being hung. Again, this bishop could not move because of back rank mate. So white plays knight d3 to cover this square. So this bishop, say could move here or something like that, and then rook c1 would be covered by the knight. And if again, if black tries to move the knight, you can just move it really anywhere. You can go bishop b6. You can go to any square. Sorry, that's an abominable. Uh, I can't draw arrows apparently, but you can go to any square along any diagonal except for this square, because if you go here, then you get takes, and rook h8, and the only way for white not to get mated is this, and then you just go rook e8, and basically the king has to just go back and forth, and it's a repetition of moves and a draw. So other than that move, white can play whatever and be completely winning. So unfortunately, knight takes g3 does not work either. However, knight takes g3 is an excellent try, because if white plays the obvious move, which is h takes, then black is completely winning, like queen h6, or the even more direct move, which is bishop takes f2, and then you can bring the queen up here. If king f1, then there's the classic ladder mate like this, or if the king goes to g1, then you do this mate here, which happens sometimes, and it's just a very classic mate with the rook cutting off the escape square for the king. So you can't take the knight either, but it's again a very tricky move, but objectively not the best. Another good try is rook h takes c7. Why is this good? Well, it threatens back rank, and it also just takes the bishop for free, and now you're not actually down a piece, you're just down 2 pawns, which is still bad, but it's not losing. Well, it is losing, but it's not, 2 pawns normally is losing, but it's not completely lost. You have some chances to, draw or even win the game sometimes. So, but here in this position, white can just play knight f1, and there are no issues. Rook c1 is the best try for black to get anything done, but after the very accurate knight d3, there's absolutely nothing for black to do. The best way to continue for black is to sacrifice the exchange and take on h2. This basically gives black a very long-term attack, and basically this is a little bit of compensation for being down an exchange and a pawn, right? That's what black is down. Yeah, black is down an exchange and a pawn. This is basically slightly better for white apparently, but it's close to equality. But it's not the solution. It's not the best that black can play. I want you to notice something. That is, if this h2 pawn were gone and this knight were gone, black could play knight g3 and it would be forced checkmate. Why would it be forced checkmate? Let's just think about this for a second. Well, the knight is protecting the escape square. In a norm, if this pawn were not pinned, right, white would love, let's say, remember, these two pieces are gone. Let's just imagine in your memory, these 2 pieces are gone. If a knight landed here, what white would love to do, assuming this pawn would be gone, is to play f3, and then, after the rook comes down, then king f2, and white escapes. However, this pawn is pinned, so remember, these 2 pieces gone. Just pretend they're gone. Knight g3, and white is in a mating net. They're long gone. They're completely obliterated. Because there's nothing to do. The white king can't escape. You can't make an escape square. It's checkmate. It's literally forced checkmate. This rook is going to go to h1, and it will be forced mate. So okay, so think of a way that you can get this h2 pawn off the board and this knight. Well, we already talked about knight takes g3, but is there another way to take the knight? And if you think about it for a second, the only other way is with the queen. But that's absurd, right? It can be taken with the h pawn or the bishop. This is ridiculous. How can this possibly work? Well, it does, and that is the solution to the puzzle. The amazing queen takes g3. Now, as I just explained, if h takes, remember, we can take with the knight, and all of these things are removed from the board. And look at this. White is in a mating net. White can go nowhere. The king has no legal moves. This pawn is not going anywhere. Of course, even, first off, there's a pawn in front of it, so it can't move. But second off, this pawn is also pinned. There's nothing for white to do at all. Remember, this bishop cannot move. If this bishop moves, then it's rook c1, knight d1, and rook takes d1, checkmate. So after knight g3, the best way for white to prolong the game is queen to h4. Of course, you take it, free queen, yay, nothing special there. And then the best way for white to prolong the game is after bishop takes g3. Again, remember, once this bishop moves, you have access to the back rank. So rook to c1 check, knight d1, and rook takes d1 is the solution to the puzzle. Checkmate for black. However, White does not have to take the knight, does not have to take the queen, and in fact, they shouldn't. So what is White's best move? Well, the best move for White, remember again, this queen cannot be taken, back rank mate. The best move for White is to just try to consolidate with knight to d3, and this protects the back rank. There are no issues. And, you know, don't get all fancy here and say, ooh, I'm going to leave the queen there, I'm going to take with the rook or something. Don't do that. Don't do that, because White can just take. White can just take the queen. And you're in some trouble. Oh, okay, well, I'm going to checkmate them just like usual. No, you're not. Queen e8 check, and you're completely lost. Bishop e8, queen, rook takes h5, and it's checkmate. Uno reverse card. The ultimate Uno reverse card. So if you don't take with this rook, right, and you take with the h7 rook, you can also just take the queen. Because you say, oh, look at that, I have back rank mate. Look at that incredible sacrifice. Oh, no. The pawn that you took the queen with opens up an escape square for the king, and black is completely lost. So don't get all fancy and, you know, try to say, ooh, I'm going to leave the queen there. Don't leave the queen there. Just return the queen to take the bishop. And guess what? Black is up a piece. For 2 pawns, at least, there are 4 connected pass pawns, which are a little spooky. They're a little spooky, and, you know, black's king isn't the best. However, black is still completely winning here, up a piece. There's a lot of pieces on the board. If it was just this bishop versus 2 pawns, this, of course, would be a draw at best for black. But because there's all these pieces on the board, white's king is equally weak. There's a lot of threats. For instance, black has to play g3, or white has to play g3 here to prevent the queen from infiltrating. Remember, if you know, if white does nothing like this, black's just going to take on h2, and this is actually checkmate. It's just mate. This is rook c2. It's just mate. So knight and bishop cut off, and it's another form of the back rank mate. So white has to be very careful here too. Both kings are very weak, but nonetheless, this is a completely winning position for black. So I thought this was a really cool puzzle because it looks like absolutely impossible. Like queen takes g3. This looks like it's hanging by 3 pieces. Again, it's only hanging by 2 pieces. By 2 pieces technically, because again this pawn is pinned. But it just looks like such an absurd move. You know, Morphy would be so proud if he saw this. So yeah, thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you next time.